Chapter 4: The Solar of Shadows. The air in Lord Reynard Lauren's private solar hung heavy with the scent of myrrh, its tendrils of smoke drifting from a bronze brazier near the hearth. Tucked deep within Emberhold's keep, the chamber was a cloister of secrecy, its high walls swathed in crimson velvet that devoured both light and sound. A lone chandelier dangled above the long ebony table, its flickering candles casting a dim, wavering glow over the 8 lords seated in taut silence. The room seemed to pulse with the weight of unspoken words, the shadows stretching long and lean across the stone floor. Lord Armand Vale leaned forward, his broad hands splayed on the table, his voice smooth yet laced with a quiet edge. King Tybalt's weakness grows more apparent by the day. He strips our rights, fattens his knights with gold, and squanders the treasury on feasts while our lands wither. My granaries stand half empty. How long must we endure this neglect? Lord Cedric Morn's response came sharp and immediate, a low growl rumbling from his chest. It's more than neglect, it's betrayal. He starves my shores to fund his damned tourneys. My riders waste away in their saddles while he plays at chivalry. His fist struck the table, the thud reverberating through the chamber. Vale's eyes narrowed, his tone cooling. Mind your tongue, Morn. We're here to reason, not brawl. Before Morn could snap back, a wiry man with thinning red hair leaned into the light, his green cloak stitched with curling vines that glinted faintly in the candlelight. Lord Morn speaks true, he said, his voice nasal but resolute. The king's indifference cuts deeper than you know. My wine shipments falter without his riders guarding the coastal roads. Pirates grow bold, and I lose casks daily. This was Lord Jono's red wine, 50 summers old, his pinched face framed by sparse strands of red. A vintner of renown, his fortunes relied on Morn's coastal strength. Trade routes and protection bound them as tightly as the vines on his cloak. Lord Reynard Lauren's voice slipped into the pause, soft and deliberate, like a blade eased from its sheath. A faltering king binds us all in peril, my lords. But power shifts, as it always does. The question is, do we guide that shift, or let it crush us beneath its weight? Lord Hawthorne Blackthorn, his weathered face etched with lines of salt and storm, grunted in agreement. Tybalt's knights won't guard our trade routes. Cartho's merchants circle like vultures, and without a fleet, my harbors bleed silver. We need strength, not platitudes. A young man in a crisp blue-gray doublet shifted forward, his sharp blue eyes glinting beneath a mop of black curls. A fleet would turn the tide, he said, his tone crisp and measured. The Carthos traders undercut my wares daily, silks, spices, steel. Without Blackthorn's ships, I'm a merchant with no market. He was Lord Gavin Tarswell, lean and youthful, his ambitions tethered to Blackthorn's coastal vigilance. Their alliance was one of mutual profit. Blackthorn's harbors secured Tarswell's trade, and Tarswell's wealth bolstered Blackthorn's coffers. The conversation stretched on, voices weaving a tapestry of grievances. Vale spoke again, his words deliberate. The fields suffer most. Tybalt's taxes drain my yields, and the small folk grow restless. If the crown won't act, we must. A sharp-featured woman in a burgundy gown that clung like spilled wine tilted her head, her raven hair pinned tight against her scalp. Restless small folk are a spark to tinder, she said, her voice low and cutting. My late husband's lands border yours, Vale, and I see it too. Hunger breeds rebellion. The king's neglect is a yoke we all bear. She was Lady Merla Corrin, 30 and widowed, her stewardship of her husband's holdings entwined with Vale's agricultural might. Their connection hinted at old alliances, perhaps a marriage pact or a shared stake in the fertile plains. Lauren's rings glinted as he steepled his fingers, his gaze drifting across the table. The old ways hold answers. Sometimes, to secure the realm, one must seek strength beyond the expected, beyond the crown's narrow gaze. Morn's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with suspicion. Beyond the expected? You mean beyond the king's law? What you hinting at Lauren plotting with warlocks? The accusation landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the room. The lords stiffened, their breaths catching, but Lauren's smile only deepened, a slow serpentine curve. Warlocks, he purred, his voice dripping with mock surprise. A bold claim, Morn, and a baseless one. I speak of strategy, not sorcery. Blackthorn's brow furrowed, his patience thinning. Morn, you leap to folly. Lauren's words twist, but they're no spell. Morn's fists clenched, his knuckles whitening. Folly? You're all blind. He's coiling a trap around you. Can't you hear the treason in his honeyed tongue? Vale's lips pressed into a thin line. You rave like a madman, Morn. Sit and speak plain, or hold your peace. The tension thickened, the air growing taut as a drawn bowstring. Loren tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with quiet amusement. Treason, you say? Curious that you'd fling such a word so freely. What stirs such heat in you, Morn? Morn's voice rose, raw and jagged. What stirs me? Your sly words, your veiled threats. You drag us into shadows while Tybalt falters, and for what? Your own gain. Tarswell's sharp blue eyes narrowed. Enough, Morn. You're seeing ghosts where there's only talk. Redwine shifted uncomfortably, his pinched face tightening. Lord Morn's right to question. Loren's tongue dances, too close to danger. Loren's laugh was soft, a velvet blade. Danger? I propose survival, nothing more. But Morn's rage, how it flares at the slightest prod. One might wonder what fuels it. Morn shoved his chair back, the scrape of wood against stone jarring the silence. Wonder all you like. I'll not sit here while you weave your webs. His voice thundered now, echoing off the velvet walls. You're fools, all of you, groping in the dark for his lies. Redwine, with me, he stormed toward the panel door, his heavy boots pounding the floor. Lord Jono's Redwine hesitated, his green cloak swaying as he glanced at the others. Then, with a tight nod, he rose and followed, his wiry frame disappearing after Morn as the panel slammed shut with a resounding crack. The room fell still, the silence thick and suffocating. Loren's rings tapped the table in a slow, deliberate rhythm, each clink a taunt. How illuminating! Lord Morn's temper betrays a certain frailty, wouldn't you say? Blackthorn's jaw tightened. He's brash, not frail. You know his way. Loren's gaze flickered, sharp and predatory. Do I? A lord who flees reason, hurling wild charges. Does that not hint at weakness? Or perhaps something deeper, a loyalty divided? Vale rubbed his beard, his brow creasing. He's always been loud, but that was unhinged. Storming out like a child. Lady Merla's lips thinned, her voice cool. You turn us against him on a tantrum, Loren? Loren's smile was thin, cutting. I'd have you see what's plain before you. He abandons us at a whisper of dissent. What leader does that, unless he hides something? And why accuse me of warlocks, unless it festers in his own mind? Tarswell leaned forward, his crisp doublet rustling. You think Morn's the traitor? Loren's laugh was a soft hiss. I think we must question. His flight speaks louder than his words. Perhaps he projects his own treason onto me, a shield to mask his guilt. Doubt seeped into the room like damp rot. Vale's voice came slow, uncertain. He did leap to accuse, too quick, maybe. And dragging Redwine off like that, Blackthorn crossed his arms, his weathered face darkening. If there's a chance he's slipping, we can't ignore it. His shores are vulnerable, could be a weak link. Loren's eyes gleamed, triumphant yet veiled. Prudence, my lords. We must safeguard the realm from all threats, within and without. Lady Merla's gaze lingered on Loren, sharp and searching, but she said nothing. Vale broke the silence, his tone heavy. We should watch Morn closer, see where his loyalties truly lie. Blackthorn nodded, his voice a low rumble. Aye, for the realm's sake. If he's faltering, we need to know. Loren sipped his wine, the goblet catching the candlelight as he masked a smirk. A wise step. Now, with Tybalt weakening, we must consider our next move. Alliances to secure our future, to steady the realm. The lords leaned in, their voices rising in a murmur of plans and possibilities, caught in Loren's subtle web. Outside, the wind howled through Emberfall's towers, a mournful cry lost to the night. Within, the shadows deepened, and Loren's influence coiled tighter, unseen by all but the empty chair where Morn had sat.